The Holy Book, Sefer Hayashar, Episode 62. One of the ways in which one's fear of heaven must be expressed is in the refusal to show favor towards transgressors. If one sees his fellow violating the Torah, he must approach him saying, "My brother, what you are doing is not right. Recall what Hashem's eyes roam over the entire earth. So what will you do on the morning that you are called upon to give a reckoning?" This is a serious obligation incumbent upon everyone who knows how to give rebuke. However, one must be sure to rebuke the sinner in private, not in public. For it is written, Hocheach Techiach. Note that the verb first appears in an impersonal form and only then in the second person. This is to suggest that one must begin by rebuking the offender in an impersonal manner. Thus, one should not immediately say, "What you are doing is not right." Rather, one should comment as if merely relaying information. Come and see the consequences of sin. When one commits an iniquity, one incurs a terrible punishment. I have heard that doing such and such brings detriment to the world as well as to the doer himself. For the punishment he incurs is such and such. In this way, perhaps the sinner will realize on his own that he was doing wrong and make amends. But if he ignores these words of rebuke and shows no sign of abandoning his transgression, one must rebuke him in second person, although still in private to avoid humiliating him publicly. One must say to him, "Why did you rebel against Hashem, our God, by doing such and such?" If the sinner still pays no heed, and one knows that humiliating him in public will cause him to desist out of shame, one may do so with impunity until he leaves off sinning. Hashem will not consider the humiliation of the sinner in public to be a sin. The guiding principle is that the wise speak and act appropriately and with forethought, so that their reward is not offset by guilt, heaven forbid. But if one sees that the sinner will not accept rebuke, it is better not to rebuke him. Concerning this, our sages have said, just as it is a mitzvah to say that which will be heeded, so is it a mitzvah to refrain from saying that which will not be heeded. Yevamos 65b. In short, if a person sees his colleague has fallen into sin and there is something he can do to influence him, he must make an effort. And if Hashem grants him success, he will be reckoned a public benefactor, or at least one who brought merit to a colleague, the reward for which is very great. This can be seen from the following passage from the Zohar, Parshas Tazria 45b. Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Yosef were traveling along the road when they encountered a man whose face was filled with sores. Rabbi Chia asked him, "Who are you?" The man replied, "I am a Jew." They looked at him and saw that his face was red from the sores. Rabbi Yosef said, "Surely he is a sinner. Otherwise his face would not have been disfigured with these sores. Such afflictions are not called afflictions of love." Rabbi Chia said, "This is certainly the case. They would be called afflictions of love only if they were hidden from the view of others. And how do we know that a person must give rebuke in private? This can be learned from the way that the Holy One, blessed is He, gives rebuke. Someone who rebukes a colleague out of love must do so in private to spare him public humiliation. Thus, public rebuke is not a sign of love. Similarly, the Holy One, blessed is He, first rebukes a person with mercy by striking him in private. If he repents, good and well. If not, he then strikes him openly on his face so that others will look at him and know that he is a sinner and that he is not beloved by his master. The man listened to this entire exchange and afterwards said, "Do you say these things about me with a single mind?" Whereupon he approached them, saying, "Surely you are among those who dwell in the house of Rab Shimon ben Yochai, who fear no one. But if you say such things behind my back, your words will indict you. How can you speak so openly?" They responded, "Thus is it written in the Torah, she cries at the head of the busiest places, at the entrances of the gates. In the city she utters her words." Mishlei 1.121. If we were afraid of you in matters of Torah, we would be disgraced before the Holy One, blessed is He. Then the fellow recited, "Who is a God like you, bearing iniquity and passing over transgression," etc. Micha 7.18. And he raised his voice and wept. In the meantime, his sons arrived. The youngest one observed, "Heaven has sent my father assistance." He continued, "There is a righteous man who is lost on account of his righteousness," etc. Koheles 7.15. This needs explanation. How can a righteous man be lost on account of his righteousness? The explanation is this. When sinners are numerous and sin and transgression rampant, and there is a single righteous man among them, if he fails to rebuke them, he will be punished on their account, even though he is perfectly righteous, never sinning at all. So it is with my father. He has been held accountable for the iniquities of his townsmen. For although they all behaved brazenly towards him, he failed to rebuke them and refrained from speaking harshly to them to avoid shaming them. This is why he was subjected to these afflictions. The boy's father spoke up. "Clearly, this is why the Holy One, blessed is He, punished me. For it was within my power to protest. Yet I refrained from doing so, shaming neither in private or in public." Then another son spoke up. "I was mute with silence. I did not speak of the goods, and my pain was stirred up." Tehillim 39.3. That is, I saw that people were going along reprehensible paths. Yet I was the mute with silence. I refrained from rebuking them to their faces and did not speak of the good. That is, I did not speak beneficial words to turn them from the path of evil to the path of goodness and integrity. Because of this, my pain was stirred up. That is, terrible afflictions came upon me openly. When he finished speaking, Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Yosei went and kissed him, etc. From this incident, we learn that whoever refrains from giving rebuke out of fear of human beings will be put to great shame before the Holy One, blessed is He. Moreover, even if he is personally righteous, he will be punished on their account, as I have already mentioned. The refusal to flatter the wicked is a source of life to the one who stands up to them and weakens them. By contrast, if he refrains from doing so, he may be certain that afflictions will befall him, and he will suffer shame and disgrace when he stands in the great court before the Holy One, blessed is He. Lift your eyes on high and trust in Hashem, for it is He who breaks the arm of the wicked and tramples their fortifications. Be strong and brave in the face of the wicked, and you may be certain that all the host of heaven will assist you. Muster all your limbs and your 365 sinews in fury against him to prevent him from bringing his evil plans to fruition. If you do this then, on account of the fire that burnt within you against the wicked, it will be reckoned as if your limbs were offered as a burnt sacrifice upon the altar. Even if there is a risk that one will suffer financial loss on account of a particular evildoer, heaven forbid, one must do his duty. Hashem has many agents, and if a person refrains out of concern about financial loss, he will suffer the loss anyway, many times over. For whoever curries favor with an evildoer eventually falls into his hand. Sota 41b. If a person sees that it is impossible to argue with the one he's rebuking because fortune is smiling upon him, nevertheless he may not do anything to strengthen and encourage him, nor may he assist him in pursuing his transgressions. Heaven forbid. Even if a person is liable to come to physical harm, heaven forbid, it is still forbidden for him to give aid or encouragement to the wicked, unless his life is at risk. Rather, he must try to remove himself from the situation. Under such circumstances, removing oneself is permitted, but aiding transgressors is not. The obligation to give rebuke falls in particular upon the rabbis, scholars, and judges of every town. If there is no rabbi, Torah authority, or permanent judge, then the obligation falls upon each individual Jew to rebuke his neighbor. Through this, he causes himself to be beloved both on high and down below in fulfillment of the verse, rebuke the wise and he will love you. Mishlei 9.8. He also merits entering the gate of love. Amen.